What's up everyone, it's Astro, and today we are going to be breaking down what's really going on behind the new Trump 50% tariff threat on China and why it is much bigger than just this trade deficit. If you care about your investments, whether that's crypto, stocks or real estate, this is something you need to understand. So here's the headlines on Twitter. You can see Donald Trump has tweeted here. So first of all, Trump came out with the tariffs last week, and China has then hit back with a 34% tariff, and Trump has retaliated back here. This was today, 12 hours ago, saying that if they don't remove it by April 8th, he will slap 50% more onto their tariff. China have then come out, I think it was a few hours later, 6 hours ago, China came out and said that they will not be backing down. So now we really are getting into what sounds like a classic trade war. But in my opinion, there's a few things people are missing. And this isn't all just about tariffs. There's something much bigger happening under the surface. And basically there's a bigger breakdown of the entire world order. So I want to try and make this as simple as possible for you all to understand. But basically, behind it all, there are 5 massive forces driving everything behind the scenes here. And the first is obviously too much debt. The US borrow like mad. China lend and sell the US tons of stuff. And we are now starting to see that that system is breaking. The US are hooked on debt, and China are hooked on selling, and this is just unsustainable. The second thing you've got is just political chaos in the US a little bit. So you've got the rich versus the poor, you've got the left versus the right, and basically nobody's really listening. Everyone's yelling, and there's just this kind of internal divide, and that is what leads to instability and sometimes even a collapse. So there's a little bit of that happening right now. And then the third thing is just overall there's a geopolitical shift happening here, partly to do with how Trump is going about it. But the US used to run the show globally, and now it seems like Trump is taking the stance where everyone is basically every country for itself. Less cooperation between countries, and that these are just more power plays, and tariffs are just one piece of the larger war on economics, technological, and potentially military. So that is the third point. And then the fourth is just nature, so climate control. You've got droughts, floods, pandemics, and these stress the system even more. So what that refers to is, the pandemic we had in 2020, climate change, all these things are starting to shift. And, what we went through with the pandemic, it's only a matter of time till we have to start addressing that. And that's, since Trump got in, that's what he's trying to do. And the fifth and final thing, which is big in today's world with AI, is this tech boom. AI, automation are starting to change everything. They're going to be changing everything for all of us in the next 10 years. That includes jobs, our own economy, and just even warfare. So all of these forces are colliding right now. And tariffs are just the spark that's going to light the fire, in my opinion. So we do, have to be careful and keep up to date of what's happening to allow us to make appropriate decisions when it comes to whether we're trading or just holding these assets. So I'm sure the reason most of you are watching this is because you've got assets, probably crypto. That's what this channel is about, and you want to know how all this relates to your assets. I think first you always got to look at the S&P 500, sometimes the NASDAQ, and you've got to look at what's going on there. So to see how this is going to impact the overall market, short term, I would say be prepared and expect volatility. We have a lot of uncertainty, and stocks and crypto hate uncertainty, and we've seen that. And tariffs are just adding more fuel to the uncertainty. So until we get some certainty in the markets about where we're going and what's happening with these tariffs, I wouldn't rely on any bounce or trust any bounce, should I say. If we do look at just what's gone on today with the S&P 500, you can see from the bear market low to the recent high. So this bear market was in October 2022, and this recent high we put in, we've basically came perfectly almost to the 50% level and bounced. But we do have, if we go to the daily, we have broken the 200 EMA. We still have underside support of this trend line, and this trend line dates back to COVID low. So far it hasn't been tested. 50% was just tested, and today we started pretty bad when the markets opened in Asia, and we dropped right down into that 50%. But when New York opened, we did see a bit of a rally. Again, this volatility we've seen today was heavily influenced by news. There was headlines coming out about the Fed meeting for possibly cutting rates, and that was all fake news. They were due to meet today anyway. So then when the markets found that out, plus China, the back and forth between Trump and China today, we've seen a lot of whiplash up and down. So if we move over and look at Bitcoin now, and this is where it gets interesting with everything that is going on geopolitically. I personally believe Bitcoin is built for this. It obviously was created out of the 2008 financial crisis. It hasn't been tested in any real long-term recession. Obviously COVID, it had a sharp move down, but a quick correction. So nothing really prolonged. And obviously since its creation, it's followed this 4-year cycle very well. And I don't know if that's going to continue forever. But I would say that the more chaotic and broken the global financial system becomes, the more people are going to look for a decentralized alternative, and no doubt that is going to be Bitcoin. And that's why I think you might start to see a decoupling, where when we see some future geopolitical tension, you may start to see a spike in Bitcoin, similar to what we're seeing in gold now, where everybody's becoming risk off. They're putting their money in gold. But even gold is seeing a pullback. And the reason for the pullback in gold, originally gold was rallying very hard up here, basically up only all of last year and into this year. First, quarter of this year was just straight up. And obviously this is risk off on the stock market and crypto, and people are planting their money into gold. And now we've actually seen a correction with gold, just like the stock market and crypto. And the reason for this, in my opinion, is because of recession fears. This whole move up was mainly fueled by inflation and the data that was coming out that was saying that inflation was getting sticky. People don't like that in the stock market. They want to take risk off, so they plant their money in gold. And gold performs really well in that situation, but does not perform well if we fall into a recession. And these 3 days down, everything's fallen, stock market, crypto and gold. This is a recession getting priced in. Same for the stock market, same for Bitcoin. So that's my opinion on that. Regarding the overall crypto market, what I mentioned about Bitcoin being built for this, crypto's not. I think if we fall into a recession, Bitcoin could possibly stand out on its own, but the overall crypto market will struggle, especially if we go into a long-term multi-year recession. I think a lot of cryptos won't make it out the other side of that. So it's, you've got to keep an eye on what's going on. You've got to keep an eye up to date with the news, and just make your decisions based on that. Basically, have your, just like the stock market, have their circuit breakers. If your favorite crypto drops below a certain price, sometimes you just got to cut it off and get out. The reason I did this video today was just to point out to you all to not just watch the headlines, to understand what's happening in the bigger cycle. And basically, in my opinion, we're in a once-in-a-lifetime shift, and those who can understand that and the reasons behind the chaos are the ones who are going to be able to navigate this and be more profitable. If you're in this for the long game, whether you're holding Bitcoin, stocks, or you're just trying to not get wrecked, I think it's worthwhile zooming out. It helps you stay sharp and just spend some time studying history. It's repeating itself right in front of us right now. One thing I want to just point out and show you before we finish up is the 18-year cycle here. Something I haven't talked about on my channel yet, but I will be in future videos. Basically, this is the real estate cycle. It is not your supposed house price, but more related to land prices. And it's done a great job here since its creation of this whole cycle at predicting when we are going to crash and when we're going to see our tops. And it basically, you come out of a deep recession, you have a nice push out of that, and then you have another mini recession, midterm recession, normally a lot smaller than what you see at the end. And then out of that recession, you get a steady climb up. And this final stage where we are right now is called the winner's curse. With this winner's curse comes a lot of volatility. You are, it's the hardest place to trade, but these 30% drops or 20% drops don't necessarily mean the end. There is going to be lots of 20% drops throughout this last year and a half winner's curse, and you can see the years that it's ran. So this collapse in 1954, 1972, 1990, 2008, and supposedly the next one is expected in 2026. Following these crashes, it leads to quite a long sustained bear market. We're looking at 3 years in most of these cases. So in this case, could start in 2026 and extend out to 2030 before we actually see a recovery. So something I can go into more details in a future video, but like I said, study the history, look at what's repeating right in front of you. If you find this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit the like and comment below, and please subscribe if you haven't already for more straight talking breakdowns on the market and macro mayhem that's going on right now. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.